It is a cold and frosty day in Manchester, and all across the city the canals are frozen over. But well over 100 years ago the city had seen exactly the same thing, the canals frozen. We're going back to a story from 1813. Let's see what unfolds with another murder mystery from here at Deansgate. Hey everybody, Matt and
Tom
back with you. Welcome to the dark side of the moor. Well, the snow has arrived. The earth has tilted once again on its axis. We are in a frozen land. And it was quite interesting having a walk yesterday, and all the canals are solidly frozen with snow over top. Quite a serene yet quite bizarre scene. And this story is another one of Tom's murder mystery stories from the 1800s. So I'm going to disappear in a minute and I will leave you with Tom to tell you what happened here in 1813.
So here we are in St John's Gardens, which is just off Deansgate in Manchester. And in 1813, this was a church. I can't remember when the church closed or anything like that, but at one time there were about 3,000 graves of some description in here. Well, they think we've got food. Not today, chums. We're here to talk about one of the people who was buried here. A lady called Lavinia Robinson. Now, she was described as being Manchester's Ophelia, which is because of how she was found, which we'll come on to later. But I don't think she was mad, so let's remove any of those premonitions. Lavinia was, however, a 24-year-old lady who had been born in Fallowfield, and she'd lived quite a middle-class existence. Her father was a wire worker, and they lived in a big farm called Clockhouse Farm, and then a little bit later on at Bank House, on the banks of the canal, the Ashton Canal. Eventually, though, her parents had both died, her mother first and then her father. And so to keep the family with their middle-class acquaintances and lifestyle, her older siblings decided to sell the house and move to Bridge Street in Deansgate, also off Deansgate. And it was there that they set up a school. Now, Lavinia was a very, very well-respected schoolmistress and governess at this school, working for her sisters, but she also spent time teaching elsewhere. Now, this is important for later. But one evening in December December the 16th, 1813, Lavinia was talking to her betrothed, a doctor from Jusbury called John Oldroyd. Doesn't say how many bodies. They were due to marry the next day on the 19th of December 1813, but John was concerned that Lavinia might not have been Virgo intacto. He wanted to perform an examination on her, so he was sat in her sister's parlour where she was living, and he said, "I want to," and she said, "No, you can't, it's disrespectful, and I promise you I haven't slept with anyone else, or anyone, and you can't look at me, you know." And anyway, her sister had a bad head, so her sister went to bed, leaving Lavinia and John. They continued arguing. He wanted to do this examination. At some point, he storms off into the night, and she follows him out, and their necks picked up at the New Bailey Bridge. That's on Jason Manford.
Who wears the hat better, Tom or Paddington?
Oh, you can't compare me to a national treasure.
What, you're a national treasure?
So we are now on the approximate site on Bridge Street of where Lavinia's family home was after her parents died, and school. And as you can see, she then left the house and she started walking with her intended Dr. John Oldroyd. Dr. John, not that one, Dr. John had walked on gilded splinters, but he'd also worked at the Royal Infirmary in the lying-in hospital, which means he was a male midwife. So maybe if anyone was to perform an examination, maybe he would have known, but she didn't want it. Anyway, they storm out and they go to the last place she's seen, which is just down there, New Bailey Bridge. So we're going to have a little walk down there. I hear you all saying, that's not New Bailey Bridge, that's Albert Bridge. But in 1813, that was New Bailey Bridge. They knocked it down and replaced it with one to commemorate Prince Albert. So Levvenia and Dr. John were seen by a man called Mr. James Barlow crossing this bridge. He stayed behind them and could see that they were fighting. At one point, Dr. John pushed Levvenia to the floor, and she said, "If you don't believe me, I may as well be killed." Anyway, James Barlow watched on, and Dr. John spotted James Barlow, so he helped Levvenia up with his arm, and they coldly walked across the bridge a little bit further down the side of New Bailey, the New Bailey, which of course was the prison at the time. There should be a photograph of that now. You can't get down them steps. No, you can't. They have a big gap.
So just whilst we're here, in the background you might recognise this if you're from Manchester. This is the former Mark Addy nightclub. It's been like this for a very long time. I think it got flooded. Yeah, I think there might be some pictures of what it looks like inside. We can't get into it, fortunately, as much as I'd like to. But yeah, if I find the pictures I'll put them on. But for now, back to this guy.
James Barlow followed the couple a little along here and still noticed that Levvenia occasionally shouted out, "Please believe me," and words to that effect. And then he lost them. That was the last time anyone saw 24-year-old Lavinia Robinson alive. Some very interesting things happened following on from Lavinia's disappearance. One thing, the day after, on the 17th of December 1813, the River Irwell froze solid and stayed frozen until mid-January the following year. So it stayed frozen for about 6 weeks. The other interesting thing was the family decided that she'd gone missing. I mean, she was supposed to be getting married the following day, and yet after this argument, there was nothing more seen of her. A few days after her disappearance, the family put out a advert in the local paper, the Manchester Mercury, and wanted to know if they offered a reward of £30 for anyone, 30 guineas for anyone who could give them evidence or find them their dear sister, Levvenia. The council, who weren't the council, they were the Board of Guardians, they decided in Manchester to up this by £70, 70 more guineas. So there was 100 guineas in 1813.
Wow.
1814 on offer. But still, no information of Levvenia could be found. About 5 days after Lavinia's disappearance, a note was found in the parlour where she was last seen by her family. And this note said that she was, it was a suicide note. And she'd indeed ended her life. She could live no more with the guilt or the suspicion of guilt held by Mr. John Oldroyd. Now, Dr. John Oldroyd. Now, this note was looked at by many people. Her family all being teachers. Also, she was quite young. A lot of her teachers from other institutions were still alive. This was checked with her pupils who had work marked by her. And none of them thought that this was her handwriting. So of course they checked John Oldroyd's handwriting, and he had one witness who was a friend who also said that they didn't think it was his either. How did the note get into the parlour?
So where exactly are we here?
So we're still on the banks of the River Irwell, and over there is Pomona Island, one of the last bits of real wildlife left in Manchester. We did a video on it. It used to be a people's palace, and it was also the Guinness dock. They had 5 different places for the Guinness ship to come and bring all the ice on. Like I've had a few. Anyway, I haven't, and it's over there, and the video's over there too. So we're now about 1.5 miles away from New Bailey Bridge, where Lavinia was last seen. And on the 18th of January 1814, the following year, some 5-6 weeks afterwards, her body in a shoal of ice had managed to drift gently down here. Now, it was in big blocks of ice that the Irwell broke up. And they continued on down here, and we were very worried about all the infrastructure in the river, all the weirs and all that. You have to remember, this was a time when the canals had been built, but the River Irwell, it becomes the Manchester Ship Canal, but of course it wasn't at the time. It was the Mersey Irwell navigation. So they're all worried about the damage it was going to do to the locks. But luckily it moved all very slowly, and Lavinia passed here. We must have passed a long way.
Yeah, we've come a long way. I mean,
Come a long way.
I'd say we've walked 1.5 miles already.
Yeah. And she's still got a bit further to go.
Wow, gosh, that's crazy. So just in the water here, you can see Nome Island, and we've covered a very short video on that. So you can see the front of them. This is what they look like.
So behind me is the Mode Wheel Lock. Now the name Mode Wheel comes from a corn mill that was here, owned by a lady called Maud, and she had a big wheel. Maud's wheel became Mode Wheel. Anyway, that's not why you're called. The ice shoals moved down and eventually bumped in to the lock, that was mowed wheel lock. Now, as I say, this is onto the to the Manchester Shipping Canal now, but and connects the Salford Dock level with the rest of it. But in the old days, as I say, it was quite different. But there was still a lock here on the navigation. Anyway, Levvenia was found roughly over there by the corn miller, Mr. Goodyear, and she was preserved immaculately. She'd been frozen for, as I say, 5 to 6 weeks. That meant that her body could be given, when thawed out, a really good post-mortem. And one of the things that I found most shocking about the whole case was when they did an investigation and they brought forward Mr. John Oldroyd. He kept going on and on and on about how he didn't believe that she was still Virgo intacto, as it were. And so in the post-mortem, one of the more gruesome and shocking details is that they actually checked if she was Virgo intacto, and a lot of the case hung on the fact that she was indeed Virgo intacto. So he was besmirching her name as well by keep going on about it, and so he lost his job at lying in hospital to John Oldroyd. And they had this investigation, but because they couldn't determine whether it was suicide or whether he'd shoved her, what with the suicide note, even though it looked like it wasn't in her handwriting, they decided, in their wisdom, to let the jury let John Oldroyd off. This didn't satisfy, however, the people of Bridge Street, who were Lavinia's close neighbours and family and friends, and so they smashed up his house. They smashed up any derelict property on Bridge Street. Was of course graffitied with all sorts of things about her and him and how bad he was, and he'd lost his job and been struck off from being a medical practitioner. So the local constabulary, they couldn't stop these riots in front of his house because he couldn't actually identify who was doing what. So they decided to offer him witness protection. Now, this was actually before the police had ever been formed in Manchester, and at the time it was this chap called Stephen Lavender, who'd been one of the Bow Street runners and had come up from London. He was Deputy Chief Constable, so he initiated the move, and he got John Oldroyd out of Manchester. They went off in a carriage coach down to Wolverhampton and then on to Stafford, and when they were in Stafford, John Oldroyd tried to end his life by jumping into the canal. And after that didn't work, he took a load of poison, and this was reported in the Shrewsbury Chronicle as coming from the police. Not the police, sorry, the Deputy Chief Constable Stephen Lavender. So it was all a load of rubbish, and he had been disbarred from being a medical practitioner, but it didn't stop him from practicing medicine. In fact, 2 years later, he's back in Dewsbury, is John Oldroyd, and he's practicing medicine because he's using a case to do with some soldier who'd gone AWOL during the Napoleonic War and maybe some post-traumatic stress. He's been used as a witness in that case a couple of years later. So he really did get off with it. He married a lady from Emley. She was older than him. And he died in 1837, aged, I think, 53. Didn't have any children because he didn't get married until he was in his 40s. And as I say, his wife, I think she was 50 when he married her. But he really had a very nice life. And poor Levvenia.
Found just there. She floated a heck of a long way.
A long way.
Wow, I mean, we've walked miles to get to here, 3 or 4 miles to get to here.
I suppose it's the way that she was found, frozen in the water, that refers to as being Ophelia. But I always think of Marianne Faithfull playing Ophelia, and in Act 1, when she's quite sort of passive, she's sort of normal, and then in the interval, Marianne Faithfull would go and take as many drugs as she could, and come on stage absolutely wired and go mad and do the second act. And I don't think that's what Levvenia was doing, even if it was suicide. I don't think she'd gone mad. But whether it was suicide or whether it was murder, accidental or manslaughter, he doesn't come out of it well, does he, John Oldroyd? No.
So what's this?
So this is just to show you where the wheel might have been.
Mode wheel.
Mode wheel. Interestingly, the lock keeper who found it, sorry, the mill keeper who found it, Mr. Goodyear, he found Levvenia, sorry, Mr. Goodyear, not it, Levvenia, sorry. He received £100 from the borough reward, but he gave the £30 back to the family and friends.
Okay.
A good man called Goodyear.
Okay, there we go. So another story from Manchester's dark history. Poor Levvenia.
Poor Levvenia.
Wow, gosh, no justice at all there. But I hope you enjoyed our wander miles and miles on the river, to reach the locations. And yeah, once again, you do have a book coming out. Tell us about that.
Death on Deansgate.
Yeah. Is there any sign of it, do you think?
Soon.
Yet?
Soon.
So
partner's, she's
piecing it together. So once it's available, we'll do a little bit more on it here. So don't ask me the question, where can you buy it yet? Because you can't, but it will be out soon. And yeah, we will leave you from here at Media City. We're just next to the War Museum. Maybe one day we'll film that as well. Okay, good stuff. Thanks very much.
thank you.
We'll see you very soon for the next video. Take care.